At least 7 people were killed and multiple left injured after a car struck a group of people outside a migrant shelter in Brownsville, Texas. This happened about a week ago. Apologies for the late update. Police initially said they believed the driver of the Range Rover intentionally plowed into pedestrians waiting at the bus stop outside of the Ozanam Center at around 8:20 a.m. Sunday, again about a week ago. But police later clarified that they are still investigating the incident. The driver, who witnesses said was yelling insults at the group before accelerating towards the curb, is undergoing testing to see if he was under the influence of alcohol at the time of this tragic crash. Police arrested him at the bloody scene in the border town and charged him with reckless driving, but more charges may follow as FBI and Border Patrol agents are brought in to investigate. Footage from the aftermath showed multiple injured people lying on the ground in bloodied clothing whilst emergency services rushed to the scene. I have seen footage. I can't post the footage on YouTube. I think I would get banned, get a strike, I would imagine. It's pretty horrendous. There's what I would say is a dozen or more people, mostly sat on the pavement, sat on the sidewalk, sat on the curb, and this car, an SUV, so a large vehicle, at speed mounts the curb. So it is on the road and then it leaves the road onto the curb, hitting almost everyone that was sitting on the curb, just bowling through them. Just imagine watching 10-pin bowls. That's what it was like. There's one guy who was about 4th or 5th, maybe 6th or 7th in line, as it were. Miraculously, he didn't get hit. Well, he was seen running away whilst people before and after him were crushed. Again, killing at least 7, injuring 11. So I have been slow to make this video. Got a little bit of the old procrastination going on, but I'm trying to fix that. This is a very serious topic, and from what I can see, it didn't really get too much attention. It seems to me to be a domestic terrorist incident. That would be my interpretation, my knee-jerk reaction, my layman's interpretation. I wouldn't have thought it was an accident. You're driving a fairly new vehicle in the year 2023. They don't typically veer off the road for no good reason, just at the point where there's a dozen people that you are arguing with are sitting. There's a lot of hostility in the area, Brownsville, Texas, given the immigration situation there, which I'm not going to pretend to be an absolute expert on. A couple of years back, I was very much politically minded, and the immigration issue, in my opinion, is one of the top subjects, one of the top issues that affect not only America, but many countries across the world, many Western nations, many so-called first world nations that are losing their foothold, in my opinion, which some of you may not really appreciate. But there are a lot of tensions in Brownsville, Texas, because of what I believe to be is a flood of new arrivals crossing the border, with the politicians with no real political will to stop the flow, in my opinion, as far as I can see. Where's Kamala? Well, she's having to deal with a couple of dozen migrants left on her front yard of her multi-million-dollar home, no doubt. But largely, there's no political will. You did have one person with the political will to build a wall, if you remember that guy. He was booted out, vilified, subject to multiple witch hunts, and I've probably just lost a few subs just by saying that, which is unfortunate. So I do try to not get politically involved on this channel, because if you say the wrong thing or express an opinion contrary to many of my listeners, then they'll up and leave, and it's a real shame. Didn't intend to go on a political rant, but this subject here is heavily political, so my take on it, again, as someone that read through this article more than a week ago, I've not paid too much attention, I've not done any further research. As a layman, it strikes me as a domestic terrorist attack from somebody who was angry at the migrants and who purposefully attacked the migrants, or those that he believed to be migrant. And in so doing, he killed at least 7 and injured a further 11. Now, those are large numbers. That's not a small situation. That's not, these things happen, let's move on. What's the weather today? This is not the type of subject that ought to be quickly overlooked. And my take on it is that this has been quickly overlooked. If I could, I would show the footage. It's horrendous. I think showing the footage isn't about seeing the violence, seeing the gore. I mean, that's not quite the right term in this regard, but it's about getting a better understanding of what actually happens in this situation. Reading the details, seeing these things in black and white is one thing, and we can get a lot from that. Listening to charismatic YouTubers such as myself, we can get a lot from that. But seeing the footage, that really takes us to a whole new realm of understanding. It really sinks in that a murderous act took place and that people's lives were taken away from them and others destroyed. You know, those that are injured, there's going to be some that are critically injured with lifelong injuries, life-threatening injuries. This is not a small thing and deserves to have a lot of attention. I don't feel that that has been the case and feel a little bit silly for not having made this video earlier. Back to the article, we're told that video is circulating that shows the SUV running up the curb where a group of around 25 men were sitting at a bus stop, toppling them over one by one. Yeah, that's a pretty apt description. It's like 10-pin bowling, that, you know, they're all sat in a row on the curb next to each other, and this SUV we can just see it, you know, probably 1.5 seconds prior to the first person being hit, just prior to the mounting of the curb. But that's what we see. The car is driving at speed, the SUV is driving at speed, it mounts the curb and runs over, it attempts to run over the entire row of approximately 25 men, or 25 people. I presume there were some women there. Some escaped, not many. What we see in the video is that this SUV ran a red light and was about 100 feet away and just went through the people who were sitting in the bus stop. So this driver, what is the explanation here? Either there was a incredibly major malfunction with the vehicle such that it forced the driver to run a red light and veer off the road, or this scumbag purposefully ran the red light at speed and piled into this group of around 25 men. I've got no doubt. I'm not an idiot. 2 + 2 generally equals 4. I'm not a maths expert, but, I believe there's some consistency in that. And with that, I have to believe that this scumbag drove into that group on purpose. What was the motive? Could have been this, could have been that, but we're told that he was arguing with several of the migrants, or shouting at several of the migrants, just prior to this horrendous, tragic incident. Back to the article, the SUV then apparently flipped over and continued moving for around 200 feet, striking others who are walking on the sidewalk around 30 feet away from where the group was sitting. We see that on the footage too. So there's, by memory, 2 or 3 people that I don't know if they saw the vehicle approach. I don't think they did. They were just like walking past. I believe they could have been migrants as well. And if I recall, I watched the footage about a week ago. Those 2 or 3 people that are on the sidewalk, they get hit in the back by the SUV too. So they could have died. If they didn't die, they would likely be severely injured. The driver then tried to flee the scene. Well, does that strike you as a guilty person? Yes. But thankfully was stopped by some witnesses. So well done, witnesses. Some witnesses say that they believe the man was intoxicated at the time. I'm going to say on that, whether or not this guy was intoxicated, I'm going to say doesn't really matter. If you disagree with me on that, please tell me so in the comments. But that's what's striking me. It doesn't matter if he was intoxicated or not. If he was not intoxicated and he drove into this group of people purposefully, regardless of the motive, but seemingly the motive is arguably a hate crime, arguably, in my estimation, as a layman. But if he was not intoxicated, he should be given the death penalty if that's an option, or thrown in jail for the rest of his life without the opportunity for parole. If he was intoxicated on alcohol or any other kind of drug, same thing applies. Same thing. No leniency, no difference to the situation at all in my mind. The guy ought to be locked up for the rest of his life or given the death penalty, whether he's intoxicated or not. Footage from the scene showed the police arresting a man sitting on the ground who was not wearing a shirt, and he was arrested outside the homeless migrant shelter. So again, this happened outside of a homeless migrant shelter. Officials believe he is a Hispanic male from Brownsville, but have said that he was extremely uncooperative and gave authorities a few different names. So again, does that sound like a guilty man? Yes, it does to me. Extremely uncooperative, lying to the police, trying to run away, leave the scene, flee the scene. This is somebody that does not want to cooperate. Obviously, he's a guilty party. So it is somewhat of interest that he's a Hispanic male from the area, from Brownsville. So my take on that, going to give you my opinion. So you may or may not appreciate my opinion, and if you do or don't, drop a note in the comments. But I do find that quite interesting. If it was a white male, then this would have received a great deal of media attention. The white male would have been been declared to have been a white supremacist. This most definitely would have been declared to be a hate crime and would have been discussed by every single media outlet out there. And this guy would be branded as a white supremacist that had purposefully attacked migrants. That's what would have happened, in my opinion. He's not a white male. He's a Hispanic male from the town. So what does that tell us? Well, one comment on there is perhaps that's the explanation as to why this has not been heavily put out there in the media, as far as I understand. The media don't want to remind people that non-whites can be violent too. We're not to be reminded of that. We're just to be reminded that whites are the evil ones. Am I going on a little bit too far? Maybe I am. I don't think so. Maybe I am, but I don't think even if I am going so-called too far, I think that's perfectly fine. I think a little bit of exaggeration and emphasis is important. That's why exaggeration exists as a concept. That's why emphasis exists as a concept for purposes. So, if I do exaggerate things a little bit, overemphasize a little bit, well, that's how it is. But anyway, I know I'm rambling, by the way. So I do find it a little bit interesting that an Hispanic male from Brownsville was angry with other Hispanics that had moved into his town from his point of view. Yeah. So I don't know. My take on that, I'm going to say this clumsily and perhaps in a non-PC way, but my take on it is that this Hispanic male potentially was very angry about having so many migrants coming into the United States, in particular the state that he lives in, Texas, in particular the town or city that he lives in, Brownsville. So it's not just white people that take issue with illegal immigrants. I don't know, that would be my interpretation. I think it is quite shocking to a degree, that an Hispanic male gets angered to the extent that they commit what I would consider a domestic terrorist attack, or indeed a mass murder attack. That's kind of surprising that a Hispanic male takes such terrible action against those that are of the same demographic as him, in terms of race at least. Those are my clumsy thoughts. Agree with them, disagree with them. I am interested in your comments. So back to the article. We're told that 11 people injured in the crash were taken to local hospitals. One was airlifted to Valley Baptist Medical Center. The victims' conditions aren't currently known. Again, I did read through this more than a week ago, so perhaps there is more up-to-date info out there. We're told that most of the men that were struck were Venezuelan. It is unclear how many of the victims were migrants, and a motive has not yet been established as of a week ago. But this comes at a time that Brownsville deals with an influx of migrants. So there we go. I've gone through things quite thoroughly, although too late. I feel disappointed in myself I haven't gone through this too late. Trying to get to grips with that. And if you're happy to join my memberships, that would give me more motivation, give me a little bit more responsibility to keep on top of things. And I have rambled to quite a high extent within this video, which may have bored the pants off of most of you, and I doubt many of you are listening at this point. But if you are, thank you very much. You're an absolute star. I do enjoy going on these rambles. It's a bit of expression for me. So I'm just trying to jig things up a little bit. I'm actually recording this in the morning for me, whereas normally I make the videos in the evening and I get tired and I can't be bothered. So maybe this is a better time for me if I can work it alongside my day-to-day responsibilities that pay the bills. But anyway, I'll stop the ramble from this point. I'm going to try to make a couple more recordings. If you appreciate the coverage, please do like, comment, subscribe. Again, I'm very interested in your comments. If you're happy to comment on this, that, or the other, please do. Please don't unsub if you disagree with my points of view, and I know that I've probably lost at least a couple early on. But anyway, such is life. Thanks.